So good morning, first of all, to everybody, and very pleased to be here, and thank you, Energynomics, for the invitation. I think we're very pleased to participate in this debate. Maybe there's some interesting question also, what I will be very pleased to answer your question about the market and what you think about the market. But first, maybe a few words on the OMV Petrom strategy and to answer also your question on the Oltenia project. So we published in December our strategy on our investment plan till 2030, which is a very important step for OMV Petrom, but also, I say, for the energy business in Romania. We are looking at 11 billion euro investment till 2030, and about 25% will be on energy transition, so which is 35% on energy transition, which is an important step. On top of that, and I will focus on the main two pillars, the third one, which is more, I would say, how to improve our daily business, our traditional business, because there is still need of oil by 2030, you know, and we still have to supply customers, so we still need on oil by that time. It's the development of the Black Sea gas, and of course, and here it's an important topic, especially at the moment when we see the crisis we are going through. So the two main pillars I will focus, one the energy transition, one is the Black Sea. I will start maybe with the energy transition, but after we can come back to other topics during the question. On the energy transition, so we are planning, we mentioned the different area where we want to invest in Romania. One is the photovoltaic. So say one of the projects we are talking just before is about developing 1 gigawatt of minimum as a renewable capacity in Romania. It's not just photovoltaic, but the renewable power itself. And we are very pleased to be selected in this process of CEO Oltenia, because it's a way forward to accelerate also this plan. We are looking also, and that's many more on the fuel business, but it's a very important investment on the biofuel and second generation biofuel in Romania, which I think OMV Petrom could be really a key players in the region on this second generation of biofuel. So this, and you will see some announcement on that. I think it's moving also quite fast. And then looking more at after 2025, because I think you will have step in the link to the technology also. We want to look at hydrogen, development of hydrogen, and here we don't talk about colors. I think as a company, I don't think colors is a debate. I think it's more the CO2 content of the hydrogen. And of course, we are not really looking at nuclear, to be clear. It's not what we are looking at. But we do think between green and blue hydrogen, there will be, and turquoise hydrogen, there will be some development in Romania. We do see a potential to respect the taxonomy criteria for blue hydrogen in Romania, due to the specificity of Romania. The fact you can produce from offshore, you can bring on the coast with very small distance gas. You can produce and store CO2 in the Black Sea or onshore, and you have this capacity of storage, which is quite unique. And we are talking about 10 gigaton of storage capacity onshore. And offshore, we are looking at, but for Neptune, for example, if we are producing gas, we can re-inject CO2 to increase the pressure. So it makes sense, even economically, to do that. So. And by having also potentially offshore wind to make sure that our production, our gas production is green in terms of consumption of electricity, you will achieve the taxonomy target. So I think that's where we see. We also will look at electrolyzer, and we are looking at the project at the refinery, because that's where you should start. The hydrogen is where the consumer of hydrogen, because we talk a lot about hydrogen, but if you don't have consumers, it's nice to produce, but what do you do with it? So we need to make sure it will start, of course, close to the consumer. And so the other part of the development of our strategy will be carbon as a storage as a service, because we see consumers, for example, cement factories who have no choice. You know, if they want to reduce their footprint, they have to go through carbon storage. And we see this as also an opportunity for OMV Petrom. Why? Because we have the engineers, we have the drilling, we have the geolog, so we have the skills from upstream activity to be able to develop this carbon storage. The other thing where we already signed 2 MOU with some county council in Romania, looking at geothermal, because here again Romania has a potential which we know very well because we drill in this region, so we know the water temperature, we know what we are talking about the potential, and here you can have even produce electricity, not just heat, because you have a very high temperature, which is unique. In Europe, there's not too many countries who have this opportunity. Usually it's more volcanic island, not really a mainland country, but here in Romania there is a potential. And we want to also to start on that. And a group, also OMV group, publishes strategy 16th of March, and they announce also that geothermal will be part of the strategy. So we will be certainly benefit about the new technology development on that. And we see interesting new technology on geothermal to be able to go quite deep. We're talking potentially 3,000 meters deep. Now, on the Black Sea, I was yesterday in Bulgaria. We had a team in Georgia, and in both countries we are talking about Black Sea. People are asking us, what can we do to help you to accelerate? What can we do to give you better tax regime? What can we do to make sure you start as soon as possible? And then they ask, but why you don't produce in Romania? What's happening in Romania? And I think that's also today is difficult to explain. When we started in 2018 with an offshore law, we should have gas already today. So we should be a producer of gas from the Black Sea in 2022. So it has created, of course, a lot of questions. There was an article last week in the Frankfurt Allgemeine talking about the potential of Black Sea in Romania and asking, we need this gas as soon as possible today. There's no, and we can see more and more demand in the region as well. Not only looking at, the title of the conference about the regional approach. There is a huge demand from the neighboring countries of Romania asking when you will produce this gas, because we need to diversify our supply, and we still need gas by 2030, 2035 due to the or fuel mix of our country. So the demand is there, and it's for us. We are working, of course, with the government to try to understand how we can accelerate the offshore law, but we need some legislation, and we need a tax regime which is economic, will create the right economical situation. If you look today, and compared to 2018 again, the EPC cost in Black Sea today, you can imagine the escalation versus 2018. Today we have some mines, we have issue with mines in the Black Sea. We have an insurance cost. Just to give you an idea on the cargo of Brent, so let's not talk about gas, but Brent, the cost of insurance today in the Black Sea is $5 per barrel. $5 per barrel is the cost of insurance to bring a cargo in the Black Sea. So you are facing also a difficult time to ask for tender for companies to come in the Black Sea. So we need to create also from a Romanian government the right security, safety environment. I think it's also important. Now, talking maybe on the question from the market design and what situation and the question, and I understand there are questions about market design, but I think we need to look at the root causes of the situation and not to take conclusion between a liberalized, non-liberalized market or the structure of the market between, I don't know, oil indexation or TTF indexation. And looking at the root causes of the problem is to come back to the Black Sea, is investment. So as long as you don't create an investment climate to generate new capacity, to generate and power or gas, as such, when we look at also on power today, the difficulty in terms of permitting. Look at what the Germans are doing now. For 2 LNG terminals, urgent crisis, no impact assessment, no environmental impact assessment, no very quick permitting process. I think we need to learn also from that. If you want to have new capacity, Exxon is still 4 years. 4 years they are permitting for environmental. They are doing work to get environmental permit. We still don't have. Can you believe it? It's crazy. So I think there is also urgency from the government and from the authorities to create an acceleration on the permitting, because if not, I mean, even our project on the photovoltaic, we may be stuck for 1-2 years to get permitting because of the bureaucracy around that. So I think there is an urgent need to address the permitting if you want to solve the crisis. And I think in the past we were compliant because the energy price was not so high. The problem when the energy prices are high, you realize what were the root causes of your situation. The bottleneck on the grid connection is also not acceptable. You know, you cannot block because of people who don't have even project financing coming blocking the grid connection. So you need also to make sure you manage the queue at the grid connection. If not, good project where we have financing, like Oltenia, we may not be able to connect because other people have blocked the connection without having any ideas of financing the project. So I think this is also important. There is some measure now from the TSO, from Electrica to ask for guarantees, which I think is a very good step forward, because I think we need to put some pressure to make sure that the people who want to book capacity have a real project. You know, it's not just a speculation to sell the project later on, and they are serious about the project. So I think that there are things around the permitting tax regime on producer today. You know, the windfall tax, unfortunately, on fossil fuel producer will not help the tender. I'm sorry, but to say that, but on the new combined cycle in Romania, because you put a tax on the windfall tax on revenue and not on profit, which is, you know, so you push the power plant and loss-making situations. So I think this type of measures, even if they are temporary, you don't know if they are temporary, next winter, maybe winter 23, 24, why it should be much better, you know. So the risk we see is a continuation of measures which will frame and will reduce any appetite of investment, especially in the fossil fuel generation. So here, without having a clear regulation, it's very hard to take any decision on such investment. So to come back to your question on that. So market design, yes, but look at the root causes. I think it's not, don't conclude that, because you see even in Europe today, you have different countries with different design of market. We are the same situation. If you take example of Bulgaria, you know, it will cost 3% of GDP, the cost of measure to support the economy. But they are different market in terms of liberalization than Romania. If you take Hungary, it's the same. Hungary will cost between, they say, there's no numbers because it's an election this weekend, so there's no numbers about the cost. But we imagine it will be certainly about 3-4%, because at the end they import gas, they pay the market price for gas. Even if they have a good relationship with the Russian, they still pay market price. So they will face also a difficult financing. So I think the regime, the market design today is not necessarily the problem. Is more the make sure you get liquidity, of course, different diversification of your source. And some countries in Europe do better because we have better diversification of energy sources. And you create an appetite for investors to come in your country, you know, in terms of regulation, in terms of energy incentive and tax incentive on that. So I think that's for me, not too confused to say, okay, we need to re-regulate everything, which is not going to solve your problem, because as long as you still have to, what you will do, you will increase the import because you will have less investment. So you will just increase further the import, and your problem will increase rather decrease in the future. So especially in Romania, where you have a huge potential in terms of resources compared to other countries who don't really have this potential. So that's to try to explain what we want to do. Again, we're still confident, and I don't want to be negative, we're still confident that there is a huge opportunity in Romania. That's why we put this plan forward. And we want to work with authorities to create the context to be able to make this investment as soon as possible. I think now is speed. We have our plan to 2030. Now, with the pressure we see as a management team of Petrom is how to accelerate, in fact, because we see that this investment, we may have to do it earlier than later compared to when we worked on last year. And I think that's what we want to try to push forward. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Franck, Neel, for